It's November the 6th. Let's read the Bible. Friends, welcome back to this year-long journey from Genesis to Revelation in just 1 year. So glad to have you, whether you have been with us from the beginning, and I continue to hear from people who say, I haven't missed a single day, which just is overwhelming to me to think about, but I know that hundreds of you have joined us along the way. In fact, just the other day, got a note from someone who said, quote, I just started, but I'm doing a video every day. Hey, that's the way to do it. Just start with us and go with us all the way to the end of the Bible during the end of December. And then in January, you can pick up with Genesis, because all the videos, and when we finish this year, there will be 365 videos covering the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation, plus all the Bible Q&A with Pastor Ray's. All those are going to be archived at keepbelieving.com, so you can go through the whole Bible anytime you want. You can also watch those Q&A sessions anytime you want to. So glad to have you. We're in the early chapters of the wonderful book of Ezekiel, that weird and wonderful book written by the prophet Ezekiel. And remember this, let me give you some threes, 3 dates. 605 BC, 597 BC, 586 BC. That's the 3 times that the Babylonians came to Jerusalem. First time, 605 BC, Daniel was taken to Babylon. 597 BC, Ezekiel was taken to Babylon. 586 BC, Jeremiah the prophet was left behind. And of course, in 586, that's when the whole city the walls were torn down and the temple was destroyed. It was burned to the ground, and the whole city was left a total ruin, a desolation, a wasteland. So 605, 597, 586 BC, Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, contemporaneous prophets of God. And here's the simple 3-point outline of the book. Judgment, chapters 1 through 32. That's where we are today. Restoration, chapters 33 through 39. And then the book is going to wind up with worship, chapters 40 through 48. And that judgment section, it has 2 parts. Chapters 1 through 24, judgment on Judah, and then chapters 25 through 32, judgment on the surrounding nations. And I told you I'm going to tell you a little story, but let's read this passage together, chapters 8, 9, and 10, and then the little story. Ezekiel chapter 8. In the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day of the month, I was sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting in front of me. There the hand of the Lord God came down on me. I looked, and there was someone who looked like a man. From what seemed to be his waist down was fire, and from his waist up was something that looked bright like the gleam of amber. He stretched out what appeared to be a hand and took me by the hair of my head. Then the Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven and carried me in visions of God to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the inner gate that faces north, where the offensive statue that provokes jealousy was located. I saw the glory of the God of Israel there, like the vision I had seen in the plain. The Lord said to me, Son of man, look toward the north. I looked to the north, and there was this offensive statue north of the altar gate at the entrance. He said to me, Son of man, do you see what they are doing here? More detestable acts that the house of Israel is committing, so that I must depart from my sanctuary. You will see even more detestable acts. Then he brought me to the entrance of the court, and when I looked, there was a hole in the wall. He said to me, Son of man, dig through the wall. So I dug through the wall and discovered a doorway. He said to me, Go in and see the detestable wicked acts they are committing here. I went in and looked, and there engraved all around the wall was every kind of abhorrent thing, crawling creatures and beasts, as well as all the idols of the house of Israel. 70 elders from the house of Israel were sitting before them, with Jaazaniah, son of Shaphan, standing among them. Each had a fire pan in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising up. He said to me, Son of man, do you see what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his idol? For they are saying, the Lord does not see us. The Lord has abandoned the land. And again, he said to me, you will see even more detestable acts that they are committing. Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the Lord's house, and I saw women sitting there weeping for Tammuz. And he said to me, do you see this, son of man? You will see even more detestable acts than these. So he brought me to the inner court of the Lord's house, and there were about 25 men at the entrance to the Lord's temple, between the portico and the altar, with their backs to the Lord's temple and their faces bowed, turned to the east. They were bowing to the east in worship of the sun. And he said to me, do you see this, son of man? Is it not enough for the house of Judah to commit the detestable acts they are doing here, that they must also fill the land with violence and repeatedly anger me, even putting the branch to their nose? Therefore, I will respond with wrath. I will not show pity or spare them. Though they call loudly in my hearing, I will not listen to them. Ezekiel 9. Then he called loudly in my hearing, come near, executioners of the city, each of you with a destructive weapon in his hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a war club in his hand. There was another man among them, clothed in linen, carrying writing equipment. They came and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of the God of Israel rose from above the cherub where it had been to the threshold of the temple. He called to the man clothed in linen and carrying writing equipment. I stop here to say, pay attention to what I'm about to read now. Verse 4, pass throughout the city of Jerusalem, the Lord said to him, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the detestable practices committed in it. He spoke to the others in my hearing, pass through the city after him and start killing. Do not show pity or spare them. Slaughter the old men, the young men and women, as well as the children and older women, but do not come near anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were in front of the temple. Then he said to them, defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go. So they went out, killing people in the city. While they were killing, I was left alone, and I fell face down and cried out, oh, Lord God, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel when you pour out your wrath on Jerusalem? He answered me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is extremely great. The land is full of bloodshed and the people full of perversity. For they say the Lord has abandoned the land. He does not see. But as for me, I will not show pity or spare them. I will bring their conduct down on their own heads. Then the man, clothed in linen and carrying writing equipment, reported back, I have done all that you commanded me. So the city's in trouble, and there's great destruction of the idolaters, the people of Judah. They're being destroyed in this vision. Exodus 10. Here's the result. Then I looked, and there above the expanse over the heads of the cherubim was something like a throne with the appearance of lapis lazuli. The Lord spoke to the man clothed in linen and said, go inside the wheelwork beneath the cherubim. Fill your hands with blazing coals from among the cherubim and scatter them over the city. So he went in as I watched. Now the cherubim were standing to the south of the temple when the man went in, and the cloud filled the inner court. Then the glory of the Lord rose from above the cherub to the threshold of the temple. The temple was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the Lord's glory. The sound of the cherubim's wings could be heard as far as the outer court. It was like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. After the Lord commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, take fire from inside the wheelwork from among the cherubim. The man went in and stood beside a wheel. Then the cherub reached out his hand to the fire that was among them. He took some and put it into the hands of the man clothed in linen, who took it and went out. The cherubim appeared to have the form of human hands under their wings. I looked, and there were 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside each cherub. The luster of the wheels was like the gleam of beryl. In appearance, all 4 looked alike, like a wheel within a wheel. When they moved, they would go in any of the 4 directions without pivoting as they moved. But wherever the head faced, they would go in that direction without pivoting as they went. Their entire bodies, including their backs, hands, wings, and the wheels that the 4 of them had, were full of eyes all around. As I listened, the wheels were called the wheelwork. Each one had 4 faces. One was the face of a cherub, the second the face of a human, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. The cherubim ascended. These were the living creatures I had seen by the Kibar Canal, when the cherubim moved, the wheels moved beside them. When they lifted their wings to rise from the earth, even then the wheels did not veer away from them. When the cherubim stopped, the wheels stood still. And when they ascended, the wheels ascended with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in them. Then the glory of the Lord moved away from the threshold of the temple and stopped above the cherubim. The cherubim lifted their wings and ascended from the earth right before my eyes. The wheels were beside them as they went. The glory of the God of Israel was above them, and it stopped at the entrance to the eastern gate of the Lord's house. These were the living creatures I had seen beneath the God of Israel by the Kibar Canal, and I recognized that they were cherubim. Each had 4 faces, and each had 4 wings, with what looked like something like human hands under their wings. Their faces looked like the same faces I had seen by the Kibar Canal. Each creature went straight ahead. This is a reminder, I think, that the glory of God will not abide with rampant sin. And God's patience has a limit. My spirit shall not always strive with man, God said in Genesis 6. And there comes a time when God says enough is enough is enough. He says it to individuals. He says it to families. He says it to cities. He says it to nations. He says it to whole races of people. There comes a moment when God says, enough is enough is enough. That time has come now. That's the picture of the glory of God being taken away from the temple of God in Jerusalem. The story. Well, you don't hear many sermons from Ezekiel. I'll bet in a lifetime of listening to people preach, and I've done a lot of preaching myself, and I got to be honest, I've not preached a lot from the book of Ezekiel. I've not heard many sermons from Ezekiel. In fact, if I think of the famous preachers I've known, you just maybe you hear some about the battle of Gog and Magog. We're going to get to that in Ezekiel 37, 38, and 39. Maybe you hear that, but like this part of Ezekiel, we don't, typically hear a lot of sermons. So this story must go back. It's just a memory, really. 54, 55 years. I grew up in a small town in northwest Alabama named Russellville. Russellville's in Franklin County. Russellville is it's the big city of Franklin County. I guess when I was growing up, there were 5 or 6, maybe 7,000 people there. I don't think any more than that, but it was the biggest city in the town. There was Red Bay to the west, and there's Littleville. Littleville maybe I guess it was just right across the county line, but if you went south, like you're heading toward Birmingham, you come to Spruce Pine, and then there was Phil Campbell and Red Bay out to the west. Well, I'm kind of setting the geography. I know I have some friends from Russellville and Franklin County who watch these videos. This is where I grew up, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get on Highway 43 going south from Russellville. Before you get to Spruce Pine, there's 2 little towns there. There's Isabel, and there is Rockwood. And must have been, there was a revival that moved through America, a moving of God's Spirit in the late 1960s and into the Jesus movement in the 1970s. And there in northwest Alabama, the tributaries from the Great Revival came through. And there was a revival being held at a Methodist church. I believe pretty sure it was a little country Methodist church. And there was a young man preaching a revival at this country Methodist church. You know how you can see things in your mind's eye? This is over half a century ago, but I can see my driving from Russellville out to that down Highway 43 out to that little country Methodist church. And only time I was ever there, somebody told me that something was going on. And there are probably 100 or 125 people there that night. And a relatively young man whose name I've completely forgotten was preaching that night. And you know what he took as his text? Ezekiel chapter 9. I can't read Ezekiel 9 without being carried back in my mind to that little Methodist church, Isbell, Rockwood, somewhere along in there. And that fella got up, and of course I should have, like, what would I be back then? I'd be like 16 years old. I had not read the book of Ezekiel back then, but he preached on it. And, Ezekiel 9, if you caught it, I stopped and I said, in that vision, let me go back, in that vision of that Ezekiel had, that the glory of God, the cherub, the glory of God, and there's angelic beings, but this is a vision of Israel and all of its sin. And he called to the man clothed in linen. Understand, this is Ezekiel's vision. And he says, go through the wicked city. I added the word wicked, but just go through the city, Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the detestable practices committed in it. And in the rest of this passage, we're told everybody who committed those wicked acts was destroyed, but do not touch those who have the mark of God. And you may connect that in your mind. This is kind of like the reverse image of the mark of the beast in Revelation 13, right? Which dooms you to destruction. This is a mark for good. This is God marking his people. And what is the sign? It says, who sigh and groan over all the detestable practices committed in it. And I remember that fellow preaching, and he said, do you have a burden? Or is it nothing to you, all that happens around you? Are you just going with the flow? Or are you bothered? Are you bothered by your own sin? Are you bothered by your own compromise? Are you troubled by the sin and compromise that you see around you? Do you weep and groan over what has happened? And he said, that's what we ought to do. Never forgotten that. Half a century later, that sermon is tattooed on my soul. And I want to say, I think Billy Graham said it this way. He said, we've lost the ability to blush. Blushing is a good thing. Some things ought to make us blush. And I think Billy Graham once remarked, we routinely laugh at things that made us blush a generation ago. Over recovery of the holiness of God and the beauty of God. To be so captured by the greatness of who God is, of his love and of his holiness and of his goodness, that we groan over what sin has done in our families, in our town, in our nation, in our world. So may God give us broken hearts. Oh, Lord, forgive us for laughing when we ought to be weeping. Forgive us for callousness, because sin does that. Sin, when laughed at, makes you very callous. Lord, make us sensitive to sin. May, instead of laughing at it or turning away from it, may, with unconcern, oh God, give us broken hearts. May we be the marked people of God who are brokenhearted by what we see around us, because that brokenheartedness is one of the steps to personal and family and church-wide and city-wide and national and worldwide revival. Somebody's got to get concerned. Somebody's got to weep. Somebody's got to pray. Well, I got to go, folks, but I thank God for that young man preaching in that church, because I don't know who else was moved that night, but a half a century later, I can't read Ezekiel 9 without remembering that challenge. So go out, have a great day, but let us be burdened for our own sin and for the sin we see around us. God, it's like Bob Pierce prayed, may my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God. Good prayer for today. Go out and have a great God-blessed day. Come back tomorrow. We're going to be in Ezekiel. It's going to be amazing. See you then.